In order for leather to function as a useful and eye-pleasing material for upholstering furniture, upholstering automobile interiors, making shoes, covering attaché cases, etc., it requires surface protection against natural deteriorating agents in our environment, such as humidity, dirt, chemical products, stains, body moisture, and a host of other materials with which it might come in contact. The surface protection the tannery applies varies according to the desired look and feel of the leather and how it is to be used. The surface protection is referred to as the finish of the leather. It is essential to be able to recognize the different types of finishes in order to choose the appropriate cleaning and/or repair method for your leather article. Study the following diagrams, pictures, and explanations of the main categories of leather that are used for upholstery so you'll be sure to use the correct techniques and products in each situation. We'll begin with aniline leather, which is also termed natural leather. The surface of aniline leather is colored with transparent dyes at the tannery. This transparency is similar to looking at a piece of stained wood, whereas the grain stays natural and visually distinguishable. There is no other finish on the surface. Looking through a magnifying glass, you will see variations of color and the natural texture of the leather. Aniline leather will have imperfections and differences, just as fingerprints are different for each individual. These leathers have minimal surface protection and thus tend to show the effects of usage, such as wear, scratches, UV exposure, etc. If you simply rub the leather with the tip of your finger, not your fingernail, there will be no trace of a mark. However, due to the minimal protection, light scratching with your fingernail will leave a light color or scratch mark. This is a major clue in identifying aniline leather. A drop of water will leave a temporary dark spot where it soaks in. This is another clue in identifying aniline leather. All types of leather have advantages and disadvantages. The advantages of aniline leather are that it looks natural, it feels good to touch, and it has natural grain and markings. The disadvantages are that it has shade variations, it's expensive, and it's difficult to maintain. Semi-aniline leather is colored with dyes and covered with a thin coating that contains a small amount of pigment. Since the coating is thin, it offers only minimal protection. The natural texture of the leather can still be seen through a magnifying glass, but the texture is a bit obscured. The natural color has usually been altered by the color in the slight finish. When you rub your finger on semi-aniline, it will not leave a track mark. Semi-aniline may or may not leave a light spot where you scratch it with a fingernail, depending on the depth of the finish. The piece we have shows some scratch marks, but, as you would suspect, not as much with a pure aniline. Likewise, a water drop may or may not soak in, leaving a dark spot. Our semi-aniline does not show a watermark, showing that it does have some finish. All of the cleaning and touch-up procedures that are used for aniline leather also apply to semi-aniline leather. The advantages of semi-aniline leather include a natural grain surface resulting from the fact that there is little enough finish that the feel is still very soft. The light fastness is somewhat improved by the pigment in the finish. It's a bit more practical than straight aniline. The disadvantages are that it still has shade variations that are not understood by many people, and it still can be awkward to remove dust. Let's move on to PullUp Leather. PullUp Leather is aniline leather that has been treated with either wax or oil. There is a little more protection than with a straight aniline, but the wear and tear are more obvious. Fortunately, the maintenance is not difficult. This leather usually has a semi-gloss sheen. An examination through a magnifying glass will show color variations and most of the natural texture intact. We'll again begin the testing by rubbing the tip of a finger on the leather, which has no effect. Next, we'll scratch it with a fingernail. The scratching produces very light, obvious scratches. The telltale characteristic of PullUp leather is that it lightens when stretched, bent, or pulled up. A drop of water will soak in, but more slowly than with the straight aniline. Still, in a little time, the water darkens the leather. The advantages of PullUp leather include a good touch and feel, it's fashionable, and it develops a unique distressed look. The disadvantage is that it requires regular maintenance. Next, we'll examine Nubuck Leather. Nubuck Leather is actually aniline leather that has been sanded to give it a fine, velvety surface. A magnifying glass will reveal a texture that looks like short hairs. If stroked in a given direction with the palm of the hand, it leaves a writing effect when lightly rubbed in the opposite direction with the tip of a finger. This is not scratching with a fingernail, it's just a touch pattern similar to what would have been seen on velvet. In fact, scratching doesn't look any different than the writing with the fingertip. A drop of water will cause a temporary dark spot where it soaks in. The advantages of Nubuck leather include a great look and a very soft feel. The disadvantages are that it is expensive, it stains easily, and it is difficult to maintain. Suede leather can be thought of the same way as Nubuck when it comes to identification, maintenance, and repair topics. It is the flesh side of the leather or the split side, which is the lower part of the leather when the hide is cut into two sections. Pigmented leather is the first non-aniline leather we'll talk about. Pigmented leather, also known as top-coated leather, is the most widely used finishing technique. The finish consists of an opaque base coat of pigmented resins followed by a protective top coat. It is ideal for high-use items like furniture or automotive seats. If restoration is necessary, full recoloring is possible. The natural colors of the leather cannot be seen through a magnifying glass, nor will the texture be as pronounced as it is with aniline leather. Some of the hair follicles may be seen, but they will be filled with the color of the finish. Therefore, as a strong and secure point of recognition, pigmented leather can be identified by its uniform color. When we rub pigmented leather with a fingertip, we see no writing as with Nubuck. Likewise, when we scratch pigmented leather with a fingernail, no scratches are created. In rare instances, when the coating is thin and little or no clear top coat was used, you may get a light line by scratching the surface with your fingernail, but again, these instances will be rare. In the vast majority of testing, you will not get scratch marks. A drop of water placed on the surface will not penetrate and therefore will not cause a dark spot. The advantages of pigmented leather include excellent light fastness, lower cost, good defect coverage, consistent color, and easy maintenance. The disadvantage is that it does not have as natural of a feel as the uncoated leathers. An alteration of pigmented leather is two-tone leather. This leather is exactly like the pigmented leather we've just shown, except that more than one color of pigment was used to create the finish. You can see a subtle darker swirl on this piece. In many cases, the colors are very different. The testing will all come out exactly the same as the single-tone pigment. The final leather type we'll talk about is die-cast leather. It is a completely different system of finishing or enhancing leather that is usually done on split leather or heavily buffed leather, or in other words, lesser grades of leather. It maintains a very consistent thickness and feel over the entire area of the leather, not only on any given hide but from hide to hide as well. The technique consists of creating the finishing film on a continual support of release paper. An adhesive is applied to the film and then the film is pressed on the leather. The finished leather is then removed from the release paper, displaying a perfectly uniform surface. There are two tests that will help you recognize it from pigmented leather. First, you will not be able to see any of the texture of the leather, including hair follicles, when looking through a magnifying glass. Secondly, die-cast leather is usually much stiffer than the other types of leather due to the thickness of the finish. You can see here how much less flexible it is than the pigmented leather. All other tests will be the same as pigmented leather. The advantages of die-cast leather include the fact that it is stronger than a regular split leather and it is not expensive. The disadvantage is that it does not have a natural feel. Finally, we need to address vinyl. Not being made of leather, the backing of vinyl will not look like leather. As far as testing is concerned, vinyl will have the same results in the testing we've shown as pigmented leather. Therefore, the touch-up and repair procedures shown on this video for pigmented leather will work on vinyl. The refinishing procedures will not work.